Two names, two towering careers, and a rumor mill that refuses to retire. Whenever Taraji P, Henson and Nia Long show up in the same sentence, the internet leans in. Not because anyone needs a villain, but because the story keeps evolving. A guest arc that set off whispers, a reputation that won't sit still, and a fresh jolt years later that dragged old headlines back into the light. Was it ego? Was it editing? Or did the industry do what it always does? Turn pressure into plot. It started on the set of Empire. The show wasn't just popular, it was a cultural lightning bolt, carried by Taraji's Cookie Lion. Loud, magnetic, impossible to ignore. Into that environment walked Nia Long, already an icon in her own right, stepping into a world with its own rhythm and hierarchy. When a guest star meets a machine already humming at full speed, the smallest misstep can snowball. And snowball it did. Whispers began of lateness, of tension with crew members, of a chill between the two women that producers supposedly had to manage carefully. The internet ran with it, eager to crown the feud of the season. Headlines claimed the hair and makeup team lodged complaints, that Nia had threatened legal action, and that producers nearly had to shoot scenes separately to keep the peace. Her camp pushed back hard, calling it all complete nonsense. But by then, the rumor machine was sprinting too fast to stop. Anonymous sources fed the fire, while fans took sides, and the story of a behind-the-scenes clash became bigger than any single episode of Empire itself. That's the problem with reputation. Once someone gets stamped with the label difficult, it's almost impossible to scrape it off. For Nia, those whispers weren't new. Directors and actors had occasionally hinted at clashes in the past, but she saw it differently. In interviews, she defended her approach, insisting she simply knew what worked for her image after decades on camera. She argued it wasn't being difficult, it was being deliberate, protecting her brand and refusing to settle for less than her vision. For some, that explanation rang true. For others, it sounded like a polished version of the same old story. Perception is a currency, and hers was under scrutiny. Meanwhile, Taraji's public image was moving on a completely different track. As the noise about Empire simmered, she became a leading voice on pay equity in Hollywood. She gave interviews describing how, no matter how many glass ceilings she shattered, she was asked to start from the bottom every time contracts came up. The details weren't just about base salary, they were about trailers, security, travel, the invisible math of who gets treated like a star and who doesn't. Her honesty resonated, and she became a figure fans trusted to say out loud what others only whispered. Even when the press tried to twist her pay equity comments into a supposed feud with Oprah Winfrey, Taraji pushed back, making it clear she wasn't targeting individuals but the system itself. The difference in narratives couldn't have been sharper. One star fighting the system openly, the other fighting whispers about her behind the curtain. The broader conversation was already buzzing thanks to Monique. She had spent years calling out how Hollywood labels black women as difficult when they resist being underpaid or overlooked. To her, these weren't isolated feuds. They were symptoms of a system designed to divide. Whether or not people agreed with all of Monique's battles, her framing made it hard to ignore the patterns. So when Taraji and Nia's alleged tension hit the headlines, many saw it as another entry in a larger story. Not just two actresses clashing, but two survival strategies colliding under the weight of an unforgiving industry. Then, years later, the story took a twist nobody saw coming. In 2025, Sherry Shepherd revealed that Nia Long was the unnamed actress she had spoken about before, the one who grabbed her at the Othello premiere and accused her of shading her. Suddenly, old Empire rumors resurfaced with new fuel. A fresh confrontation years later was immediately tied back to 2017, as if the two dots connected into one unbroken line. Social media had a field day, stitching together timelines, quoting old articles, and treating it as proof of a pattern. Long herself stayed quiet, but the silence only made the speculation louder. Through it all, the contrast remained striking. Taraji's image as a leader who protected her crew solidified, bolstered by stories of her respect for everyone on set, and her refusal to let people get sidelined. Nia's image, by contrast, became more complicated. She remained undeniably talented, undeniably iconic, but also stuck in a cycle where every new headline was interpreted as confirmation of the old ones. Fair or not, public opinion tilted toward Taraji, while Nia fought a reputation that seemed to follow her no matter what role she played. The truth is that both women's legacies are bigger than any feud. Taraji's catalog speaks for itself, as does her influence in pushing for equity. Nia's career spans decades of memorable performances, and she's still working, still drawing attention, still shaping her story. The internet may prefer the drama, but the reality is always messier. Two women, two careers, one industry that often pits them against each other instead of asking why it thrives on conflict in the first place. So, was it ego? Was it miscommunication? Was it Hollywood doing what Hollywood does best, turning tension into entertainment? The evidence depends on which version you believe. Reports of complaints exist. So do denials. Interviews exist where Long insists she's misunderstood. Others show Taraji channeling her frustration into public advocacy. Both things can be true at the same time. And maybe that's the point. It isn't about deciding who was right, but about questioning why these stories are written the way they are, and why they stick so tightly once they start. If you strip away the gossip, you're left with something harder to categorize. Two artists navigating an industry that rewards boldness in some and punishes it in others. One woman cast as the saint, another as the diva, but both paying the price of being visible in a system that prefers silence. The next time the rumor mill spits out another feud, maybe the smarter move isn't to pick a side, but to ask whose story benefits from the noise. Because if history proves anything, it's that once the whispers start, they're almost impossible to silence.